Hey, give it up for him, everybody. Give it up for him. Wow, look at us. We're all here tonight. Thank you for coming out and supporting live comedy. Give yourself a round of applause. Give yourself a round of applause. Yes. I'm excited to be here. I'm actually here to tell you some good news about myself. 2 years ago, my doctor said I had to lose 55 pounds. Guys, I lost it 2 years ago, and I've kept it off the entire time. Thank you. Here's how I feel. I feel I no longer look like a fat guy that has to lose 50. I feel I look like a skinny guy who just gained 30. Like, some of you didn't clap over there, and that's okay. I lose weight. When I lose weight in the weirdest places. I don't always lose it in the gut or another part. I lose it in the face. And so the other night, before I came here, I wanted to look real good. And one of my favorite shows right now is Ted Lasso. We got any Ted Lasso fans? Yes. So here's the thing. I wanted to get the Jason Sudeikis Ted Lasso mustache. And so I shaved everything down to just the stash. And when I was looking in the mirror, I went, if I go out in public with this, they're not going to let me near a school. So then I shaved the whole thing down to a baby face, and I looked back in the mirror again, and I was like, when did I become Newman from Seinfeld? Some of you are going, that's a 30-year-old joke. I'm trying to take advantage of how I'm looking these days. I'm on all the dating apps. The one that works the best for me, Venmo. Because when you pay, they stay. Some of you got that joke, and some of you will explain that joke to someone on the car trip home. And I tried every dating app. I even did Farmers Only. Couldn't find a single hoe. You guys know what farms are. California doesn't. Here's the thing. Here's what happened. In 2021, I had a big scare in my life. I had a massive heart failure attack, which means only 20% of my heart was functioning. And the doctor said that if I would have waited like 6 more months to come in, I would have died. And I don't want to ruin the ending, but guys, I made it. Thank you. Oh, you're already clapping. So here's what happens. They rush me into the ER, right? And I go into the hospital after that, and they run some tests, and they come back, and they go, Mr. Moomjean, we got a few questions for you, because you're 39 years old, and there's no reason for this to happen, so can we ask you a few questions? I said, sure. They said, well, it seems like, your heart isn't functioning the way it should. Do you drink a lot? And I go, well, I don't want to brag, but I am an American. And they go, well, how many drinks have you been drinking regularly? I said, I don't know, 8, 9, 10. They go, a week? I go, a night. Okay. And they go, oh my God, what have you been drinking? Beer and wine? I go, no, vodka, sodas, and Trulies. And they go, well, that can't be the cause, because that's the diet of a 16-year-old girl. Then they said, Mr. Moomjean, we noticed that you're not afraid of needles because of your tattoos. Would you like to see the tattoos? Would you like to see the tattoos? Right here, I have a St. Francis of Assisi on my arm. If you want to know how I was at that point in my life, I literally tattooed a virgin on my arm. All right? I also, we'll see if we can make this work. I got this wolf right here. You know what that catches? Cougars on Facebook. I'm trying, folks. So they go, we know you're not afraid of needles, and we got to let you know you tested positive for the hepatitis C antibodies. So we have to ask, have you ever tried meth? Guys, there's no way to tell your doctor you haven't tried meth without sounding like you've done all the meth ever offered in your entire life. And he goes, well, did you try this drug, heroin? Did you try this drug? I said, Doc, I was told that you can get hepatitis C through sexual activity. And he goes, yeah, some people get it that way. Mr. Moomjean, we know that you have not had sex within the last 3 years. Because based on the charts of your heart, had you had sex in the last 3 years, you would have had a heart attack and died. So now I'm sitting on my deathbed, texting every girl that rejected me over the last 3 years, going, thank you. You literally saved my life. So they cleaned me up, they drained me out, and they said, go see a specialist in a week. So I go and see a specialist, and the doctor says to me, Mr. Moomjean, this is very important that you get your act together, or bad things are going to happen. And I go, well, what's the worst? And the doctor goes, you could lose a foot. And I go, Doc, I'm a comedian. This could only help my career. Right? Like, you guys have all heard of Larry the Cable Guy, right? Okay, I would just become a character comic. I'd become Paul the Pirate. They'd wheel me up in my little wheelchair. I'd look at everybody, and I'd have a catchphrase, too. Arr, you checking your blood sugar. You laughed a lot more than my doctor did. Doctor looks at me and says, Mr. Moomjean, you are not taking this seriously at all. It can get really bad. I go, okay, well, what's worse than a foot? They go, your penis will stop working. So the next day, I joined the North Hollywood Gold's Gym. And let me tell you, out of this entire journey, that's been the scariest part of anything, being in a really shady part of Los Angeles going to the gym. That place is filled with a bunch of bearded, angry, steroid freaks. And that's just the women. And I'm happy to report that I've lost the weight, I've kept it off, blood sugars are good, blood pressure is good, and if there's any single ladies in the house tonight, my penis works just fine. It's just currently unemployed. You're either cheering for me or you have the same problem. I'm very lucky that I get to do stand-up comedy. I'm very lucky that I get to do these things in my life. And mostly the reason is because I have a loan shark. My grandma. She's 88 years old. She's a little pistol. All right? She's 4'7". All right? This makes her an actual living hobbit. She's feisty too, gets in lots of fights everywhere. We took her to a casino in California for Thanksgiving, and the Native Americans came up with a new nickname for her, Little Big Complainer. And here's the deal. She tells me as long as I come over and visit, she'll cut a few checks to support the comedy career. That's her big thing. She wants to support the comedy career. All I have to do is listen to her complain. And all she wants to do is complain about Joe Biden. She is the most Republican woman I have ever met in my entire life. If you let me finish, I'll explain how. She voted for Eisenhower in 1952 and has been voting for him every year since. She even voted for him in the 1996 election when my grandpa said, no, we're voting for Bob Dole, and she looked at me and him and said, well, Ike's more alive than him. All right. Obviously, we've forgotten about Bob Dole in this country. All right. Now, here's the thing. She loves to make fun of Joe Biden. No, I wasn't with her last night during the State of the Union, but I can tell you right now, whenever I'm with her, she's always like this. Look at him, he doesn't know where he is. Can't read the teleprompter. Always talking about ice cream. And I go, I know, Grandma, now stop talking to the lamp. My grandma, my mom, everybody wants me to get married. I'm 42 and I'm single. I thought my life by now I'd have kids, I'd have a house. Instead, last year I ended up just having a 23-year-old roommate to get by. All right? No, really, what happened was I had a coworker. Her boyfriend, they broke up, so she decided that she wanted to move into my extra room. I said, that's great, that cuts the rent in half, let's do it. Guys, never live with a 23-year-old. It's awful. It was my own version of 23andMe. This girl knows nothing about anything. I became her father by about a month in. She didn't realize that when she broke up with the boyfriend, his car didn't come with her, okay? So she's like, what are we going to do about a car? I go, what do you mean we? She goes, well, what am I going to do? I said, well, tell you what. I go, do you have any savings? And she goes, I got $50. And I go, great, we can buy you a Lego car. She gets her mom to give her $1,000. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take $1,000, and we're going to go to a car dealership, and we're going to use it as a down payment. We're going to use it to finance the rest of the car. And this is what she says. She goes, I don't want to finance. I want to make monthly payments. Now, if you didn't laugh at that joke, I don't want to know what your economics grade in college was. Here's the thing about living with a 23-year-old. I will date women in their 20s, but if I get married to one, I will not live with her. I will get an apartment for her, and I will live in a house, okay? It's very frustrating. And I do date all ages in LA because it's kind of acceptable, and you can only date who's single. I try to date married women. Their husbands did not approve. I recently, actually, earlier last year, I took a 25-year-old girl to a Laker game at the Crypto Center. I decided that I had a good year in comedy, and I'm going to go out there, I'm going to give myself something fun, I'm going to do something fun, I'm going to take a pretty girl, it's going to be a great time. So I got $500 tickets at the Crypto Center. That's a $1,000 date already. And I figured, you know what? If I'm going to go into bankruptcy, I'm going to do it right. And I said, we're going to go to the steakhouse across the street called Mastro's, and I spent another $500 on that date. And this 25-year-old girl wasn't impressed with the seats down by the floor. She wasn't impressed with the fancy meal. She was impressed with one thing, the fact that I spent $50 on the parking spot to get into the arena. No, really, she pulls out of her phone. She pulls it out and she's going Instagram Live saying, my man can afford $50 parking. None of yours can. I'd like to say that I had a second date after I spent $1,500 on a 25-year-old girl, but I did not have a second date. Because the problem was the seats were so low that every time we had to go back up and down to get food and drink and everything else, I complained about my knees the entire time. And it turns out that a girl does not think that you're ever going to get down on one knee if you complain about both knees. I do have a lot of different types of women that I date, and I tried to recently date a woman who was a former comedy student of mine. So sometimes during the week I make extra money doing comedy classes. And so about a few years ago there was this girl that I had met, and she had just gotten back from the pandemic now, feeling safe from her home state of Colombia. She lived in Colombia, and so home country. And so she comes back and she says, hey, let's go on a nice date. And I go, great. And so she's an aspiring actress and all these things. So I pick her up in the car and I'm taking her to the restaurant. And I go, so what have you been doing with your life? She goes, oh, you know, I was in Colombia and it was okay and it was this, but I'm glad to be back. And I've been back for about 6-7 months now. And I go, oh, that's fantastic. And so we're sitting at dinner and I said, so are you still acting, still doing comedy? And she goes, well, I do porn now. Guys, I'm dating a Colombian porn star. Give it up for me, yeah. So she proceeds to tell me about what it's like, life on set, and it got a little graphic, and I was okay with it, but the waitress seemed a little disgusted by it, you know. So we're sitting there, and the date's going okay, and all of a sudden she looks at me, and out of the blue she goes, "Can I have $1,000? I'm like, "What for?" She goes, "I don't really want to tell you." And I go, "Is someone kidnapped?" And she goes, "Tell you what, if you give me $1,000, I will give you the full Colombian porn star experience." And I say to her, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, that's not me. That's not what I'm into. I'm very sorry." She goes, "Fine, $500. And I got a little embarrassed and a little mad, mostly because the ATM only let me pull out $400. No, I walked her home. I just felt like entrapment the entire time, right? Like the feds are just waiting for me up in a room somewhere, right? I'm very lucky that I get to do this, like I said, and I didn't always get to do stand-up comedy. I didn't always get to date 25-year-olds and porn stars. For most of my life, I had a much more simple life. I used to be a wrestling coach, which was weird because I was the worst wrestler in the history of my high school. Guys, I won 2 matches in 4 years. And one of those matches, the kid accidentally pinned himself. No, really. Like, he pulled me on top of him, and the ref slapped the mat, blew the whistle, raised my hand. Everyone's cheering because I'm down 13-0. Big comeback win. The only person to protest the call, my head coach. It's like, there's no way Paul could win. We don't have enough rooms to keep him overnight for the tournament. We need to send him home. Cheap bastard. So he sends me into the weigh-in room. He goes, "Maybe Paul will be overweight and we don't have to keep him around." So he sends me in the weigh-in room. I step on the scale. I'm about 5 pounds over. I step off the scale. And the kid who's guarding the scale and taking the names down and to cross them off looks at me and is like, "Hey man, you gotta lose 5 pounds." I go, "I know, but let me check and see what happens when I drop my drawers and see if I make weight. How much weight I gotta lose?" This is the 90s. You're allowed to do that. The president was doing it, you know. And so the Clinton joke we get, the Bob Dole joke, no. So I'm about to drop my drawers, and this JV kid goes, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. You made it." So I go back and I tell my wrestling coach, I go, "I made weight." And he's like, "How?" I said, "You don't want to know." I said, "But if you send everyone who made day 2 to scale number 3, just tell them drop your drawers, and as long as they threaten to pants a kid who's about 12 years old, we're all going to Denny's tonight." But what happened was I ended up becoming a very successful wrestling coach. Way more successful than I should have been. In fact, I won 11 league championships, 3 section titles, had 62 state qualifiers, 3 state placers, and 1 Olympian for Team Uzbekistan. Thank you. And you're clapping for a country you had never heard of until now. In fact, most of you probably think Borat wrestles for Uzbekistan, right? So I ended up becoming a coach, and I had to get out because the parents were becoming too much. It was just too much with the parents. In fact, I remember the moment that I said, "I'm done, it's over." I had a sophomore lose to the state champ 1-0. So proud of the kid. Great effort. His big, fat, stupid dad did not agree. He comes running down from the bleachers, his gut flapping in the wind. He knocked over 2 snack girls and 3 JV kids. The only thing that survived the trip down the stairs was him and the Diet Coke, okay? And he looks at me out of breath and he goes, "Hey, Moomjean, you suck as a coach. How come my kid didn't win? Give me one reason." And I look at him and I say, "Sir, I can only work with the genetics you gave him." His wife is standing next to us when I said that, and suddenly she breaks into laughter going, Oh, we have to blame the mailman now. I spent most of my life in education prior to doing stand-up comedy. In fact, I even worked at Borders Books and Music before I went out of business. You guys remember we used to read in this country? Okay, no one's clapping, that's fine. I worked in the kids section. My job was to put those nice displays together. And I'll never forget one time I worked in a real ritzy part of Southern California. It was a real ritzy part. And this wealthy mother and her little brat come running in, right? And the little kid knocks over all my displays. And he's so wild. He just looks like a little Chucky on speed. He's just, And then he looks down and he realizes what he did. And he starts to pick up his mess. And the mom says, "Stop that." Points at me and goes, "That's his job." And the little boy comes up to me and says, "Well, what's my job?" I said, "Son, your job is to take care of your mother, especially after your father leaves her." Guys, that's me winning at 25 years old, everybody. That is, yes. I mentioned that I teach comedy. Sometimes that's another job that I get to do. I still get to be in education. And here's what I found, okay? And I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. A lot of people who try to do stand-up comedy, they think they're funny. They're actually just a little racist. They don't mean to be, you know. And a lot of weird people try to do stand-up comedy. In fact, I had an assignment. I said, I want you to write the 10 things you want to talk about in this class. And the next week, this guy shows up and he goes, I just have one thing I want to talk about. And I go, well, what's that? And he goes, my small penis. And I'm like, well, okay, why do you want to talk about that? And he goes, you know, get it out of the way. And I go, sounds like it's not in the way of anything. That's also the story of how I lost a $500 student. But the weirdest stories were during the pandemic. I was teaching classes during the pandemic, and I had a mom call me up. And she goes, my son is 12 years old. I don't know what to do with him. I want him to be part of an activity. Can he sign up for your comedy class? No, I don't want to do it because it's mostly adults. But then a little voice in my head said, wait a minute. We have a rule in comedy school. If your mother's credit card goes through, then comedy is for you. So we have the kid in the class, and it's the first day, and he's doing a little interview with me, and he's showing us his room and his little iPad, and it comes around to his cat. His cat's huge, looks like Garfield. And I go, oh my God, the cat's huge. And he goes, I know, we don't know what happened. And I said, well, they do say the camera adds 10 pounds. He looks at me, and this 12-year-old boy says, really? Well, then how many cameras are on you, fatty? Guys, I taught 7th through 12th grade for 16 years, and I'm going to stand by this statement. That is by far the most respectful kid I ever taught. Had a lot of weird jobs over the years, lots of weird jobs over the years. But the weirdest one I ever had, I worked at a barbecue takeout place called Red's Barbecue in my hometown, all right? I was 26 years old, and I was driving around, and I wasn't doing very well. I'd knock on the door. Hi, I have your Western burger and fries right here. And I give him the food, and he gave me some money, and it was exact change. And I go, oh, you're allowed to give me a tip. And he'd go, here's a tip, go to college. I'm like, well, I did. In fact, I have a master's in English to complement my bachelor's in English, because I like doubling down on things that don't work. So I realized I'm making no money. I got to get a plan here going pretty quick. So I read an article that said people like people who have accents. So I'm like, all right, we'll give this a ring. So the next day I get in my car. Hello there. I got your Western burger and fries right here for you. And the guy goes, oh, that's a great accent. Where are you from? Well, I hadn't thought that far ahead. I knew it was something, and it was either Australian or I was Dick Van Dyke from Mary Poppins. And so I went with Australian. I just go, oh, I'm Australian there, mate. And he goes, great. What are you doing in the States? So that's when I pulled out a fork and stabbed him in the neck. Because I have no way to get out of this. So I know this, though. If you go dark, people stop talking to you. So I told him the darkest story I could think of. I said, well, sir, You see, my mom, back in the old country, she's real sick. And the doctor said that there's no cure. And you're going to have to go to the States to find a cure. So now I'm saving up money working here at Red's Barbecue so that I could go to UCLA Medical School to find the cure. And the guy's about to give me my first $5 tip I ever got, and he pulls it back. And he reaches into his pocket, he pulls out a $20 bill, and he says, "Go find that cure, son. Go find that cure." Now, don't judge me. I just did this for the next 9 months of my life. And I got good, too. Guys, I was making about $1,200 a week in 2006. All right? Guys, I felt like a Hooters girl. And I was so famous, too. I'd come into work, and there'd be a stack about this high of deliveries, and it would say regular drivers. Then there was a stack 4 times bigger that said for the Australian. Oh, I'd come to the door knocking, and I would have some lady open the door and go, "Oh my God, the Australian's here. The Australian's here. Get the kids, get grandma, get a camera. We're gonna take pictures." Guys, the kids would be running up to me, and I'd be like, "Hello, my little kangaroos. How my little dingoes doing?" I was in 6 Christmas card pictures that year. I like to think almost 20 years later, people look back in that weird year of 2006 and go, "Why did we take a picture with the Red's Barbecue guy?" So word gets out that I'm making more money than God, and everyone else who's 19 or 20 years old, they're telling me, "We're going to start doing accents too." And I go, "Nobody gets to do Australian, because no one's going to believe that this part of California is now an Australian refugee camp." So they all went out into the world. A week later, they all came back and complaining. In fact, I'll never forget, George comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, Moomjean, your idea is stupid. It doesn't work, and I made no money. I'm making less, actually." And I go, "Well, George, what accent are you doing?" And he says, "A French one." I go, "George, you're Chinese." And nobody likes the French. I have to go soon, but I want to share with you that I get to do a lot of fun road gigs, and you guys have been wonderful. Recently, I did a road gig in Tucson, Arizona, where my best friend Adam lives, and I've known Adam since 7th grade. We both got knocked out in dodgeball, and we've been best friends ever since. Okay? In fact, if you want to know how big of a nerd he is, he named his kid Wesley after the Wesley in The Princess Bride. Okay? I only hang out with guys who have sex once and then have kids. Okay? So I get to live in his place for a whole week. And the only person who had a problem with that wasn't his wife, it wasn't him, it was his 3-year-old son, Wesley. Because Wesley and I had to share the 2nd floor together. Which means he had to pull all of his dinosaur toys out of the bathtub so that I could take a shower. Little did he know, when he wasn't looking, I put all the toys back into the shower to have fun of my own, okay? So this little 3-year-old is absolutely distraught. I've broken his whole world. And so on Christmas morning, after all the shows have been done, we're sitting there, and I got him this little zoo set. And he opens it up, and he's so excited. He goes, "Oh, who gave me this?" And Adam goes, "Uncle Paul did." "What do you say, Wesley?" And Wesley looks at me and goes, "Oh, are you going home now?" I go, "No, Wesley, it's only 10 a.m. It's Christmas. I'm going to stay the whole day, and I've already drank 2 bottles of wine." I said, "I'm going to stay the night." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Don't you have a wife to go home to?" And I'm like, "Who's feeding these kids these notes? My mom?" And I go, "No, I don't have a wife." And he goes, "Oh, do you have a penis?" Guys, there's no way to tell a 3-year-old that you have a penis without never being asked to go back to your best friend's house ever again. Finally, I take him upstairs to go to bed. I have him in a nice little hug, and I said, "Wesley, I'm leaving now. Is it okay if Uncle Paul comes back to visit again?" And this 3-year-old boy does this. "If you must." He's not the hardest heckler I've had, though. Last year, I had a really weird show. I did a show at the old folks' home. They were not fans. 2 minutes into my set, I hear this. Excuse me! Excuse me! Excuse me! Yes, sir? I'm leaving! Can I ask why? Because you're not that funny, and I don't have much longer to live. Guys, thank you very much. I am Paul Douglas Moomjean. I have been told, thank you, no, please, yes. Yes, I need this. I need this. We clap for comedians because our parents didn't clap for us.